Welcome back to Studio B for the SGA Executive Presidential Debate between juniors Avery Stedman and Sean Berry. Thanks for being here with us tonight. Before we get started, let's just go over how everything is going to work. So each candidate will provide a brief opening statement, then I will pose a question to the candidates, and each will have a minute to answer. After the question, each candidate will have 45 seconds for a closing statement. Before the show, we flipped a coin to see who would speak first in the debate, and then we'll alternate from there. And so Avery won the toss and chose to speak second. So, first question, Sean. Like we mentioned earlier in the show, there are many SGA positions that are going to be vacant after this election because no one's running. So, as president, it would be your job to appoint people to these positions. So, if elected, how would you go outside of your social sphere to fill these positions and give a voice to groups that may not be represented on the current Senate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's something that's very important that we need to do in our next year at SGA, and that's something that I've really worked closely with Joe with in the past year as well. I think the main aspect of finding that is finding those all-stars on campus, finding those people that are really going to represent who their constituents are. Finding people like Robert Danis, who had nothing to do with SGA as of just a couple months ago, and he came in and has really made an impact on this campus so far, on SGA so far. So it's going around and not just focusing on your friend groups, but talking to every other senator on SGA and seeing who they believe can fit well into SGA and get the work done to represent their constituents as best as possible.
And Avery, how do you feel like you'd be able to do this if you were elected?
Sure. So actually, as part of my position as the executive treasurer this year, I actually did do a lot with picking out and trying to help new students be appointed to positions on student government. And how we went about that was a lot of emailing to different leadership fellows, to business fellows, things like that. So we would definitely get different spheres. And then it was a lot of word of mouth because, you know, the people that are great at SGA are the ones who are most passionate and the ones that really, really want to be there. And those are the ones that put the most time and effort into it. So that's what we look for when we are trying to appoint new positions to student government.
And now the second question will also be first to you, Avery. So in your time here at Elon, there have been multiple occasions of harassment in regards to race. The Multicultural Center is now the Center for Race, Ethnicity, and Diversity Education. So how are you going to use your position and resources to help create a campus of inclusivity?
Yeah, so the Creed is great. We spent the beginning of our retreat this fall at the Creed learning all about what they are doing, what they're planning. We spoke a lot with them about what they could do to teach diversity education, and I think that's very important to start from the beginning, to start from like the first day on campus, to really get into the new students' heads about what Elon sees as proper development through diversity education. So I think that's where we need to start, and hopefully, I know I've spoken a lot with the Creed about it, and they're in the same direction, so it's great.
And Sean, how would you help create more of a campus of inclusivity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the Creed has been a fantastic since they switched it up with their new name and everything, and Randy Williams coming in this past year as the director within Creed has really done an amazing job around campus. But I think there's so much that administration can do to really try to come in and help out as soon as students get on campus, do different programs and things like that. That's one aspect of it, but I also believe that it also starts with the students. I think that students need to start the initiatives to make sure that we can get out there, get our voices out there. There's only so much that administration can tell you, but if it's coming from the students and you're talking to other students and getting that perspective, you're going to respect that opinion so much more than it coming from people you barely even know in some cases. So I think we need to start student initiatives, working with students in Creed, working with other students on campus, especially even within the LGBTQIA Center and all other race and ethnicity and different diversity centers on campus to really make sure that we can change it as students.
And Sean, for the last question of the debate, creating an intellectual climate here in Elon has been an ongoing project for a couple of years now. So as student body president, how would you help support Elon as a growing intellectual community?
Yeah, that's also another important thing, and I know in past debates and past discussions, it's always been something that's always been brought up, and we've had different discussions on it last year. Something that's really it's gonna be to the same thing that I just talked about with diversity. It starts with the students. So creating those dialects, creating those discussions around students to make sure that we get it out there for that and making sure that everyone on campus knows what our goals are. And through SGA, we can push that as well. We can have those discussions in our meetings weekly and make sure that we can have as much of an intellectual climate on campus as we possibly can.
So my favorite discussion that I've had about intellectual climate was actually in Jamaica during an alternative break trip. And I remember sitting by a fire and we were talking about what Elon needed to increase our intellectual climate. And I think those conversations are the ones that are most important to have with our peers. And we, at that time, were talking about the Oak House. And it's so cool now to be standing here knowing that the Oak House is there, that this really has helped. That, I think, is a place for us to all go. And I know I've had intellectual climates there, and it's amazing. And I think also, starting with the Intellectual Climate Committee, that really made a huge difference. If we can keep that going and keep up the discussion, keep up the conversations that go from between the students to the student government, because we really do have incredible power to get to the administration. If we can do that, I think our intellectual climate in the next 5 to 10 years will just be over the roof, and our students will be so excited to come here.
Thank you both very much. Before we end here in Studio B for the night, just your closing statements. So, Avery?
Yes. First of all, thank you all so much. I've had an incredible journey as the executive treasurer. I've learned so much about how student governments run. I think that with that, knowing the ins and outs will really help me, just put me right at the beginning to help you all to get your voices heard. So please vote for me next Tuesday and Wednesday. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys again for having me tonight. Elon Local News, you did an amazing job. I just hope I have your vote next week. I am very excited to represent you in some capacity. I want to make a difference on this campus, and I want to show that my leadership skills and my abilities that I've had so far in my 2.5 years so far have really proved that to you. And again, I hope I have your support, and thank you again.
Well, thank you both, and thank all of you for taking the time out of your nights to come here. That concludes the SGA speeches and presidential debate.